Hello and welcome to PWM Radio. Our guest this week is one of the biggest names in the UK. He's wrestled all over the world, appearing for TNA and Dragon Gate. He is the reigning and defending Southside heavyweight champion. We are delighted to welcome the star attraction, Mark Haskins. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. As you said, reigning and defending then, I thought you said that I was Iranian, and I was like, wow, that's news to me. Like, wow, cool. Is this how you break it to me? You know, something my parents haven't told me yet? But no. Thank you anyway. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for being on. So firstly, I just want to say huge congrats on being the longest reigning Southside heavyweight champion. I think it's over 450 days now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I guess I don't really kind of think about it, like, in the sense of, I'm always kind of like looking forward to the next show and that, but I never really take into account, how long I've been a champion for or anything. So every once in a while, this little tweet will pop up and be like, now it's like 457 days. And I'm like, oh, wow, cool. Yeah. It's been that long, like, wow. But, it also makes me feel quite old as well, because I remember like winning the championship. So like now I'm like, wow, I've aged.
Yeah.
But no, it's cool. It's a great privilege, to be a champion of one of the main companies on like the UK scene, especially for that length amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. So, looking back at 2014 for you, you might have taken some time out with injuries at the end of the year, but, you had an intense feud with Tommy End over the Southside title. And, you also wrestled Prince Devitt on his way over to WWE and, featured prominently for, top UK promotions like Progress, NGW, just to name a few. Other than your injuries, how do you feel 2014 went for you?
I don't know, like, it was weird because it was like the first year where I didn't really have like a career goal as such, like mentally, like I didn't really know where I wanted to go or what it was exactly that I wanted to achieve. So for me, it was kind of like a very experimental time, but, and once again, for me, it was more of a year that, how can I explain it? Like, so basically, like, and this is the thing that people don't really realize, is that I wrestled from May up until October, constantly injured with one injury after the next. Like I broke my fingers in May. I screwed up both of my rotator cuffs. My right one needed 12 weeks of physio through the summer of that year. Then it got to, I guess, sort of like late July, August time, and I partially tore my adductor muscle in my right leg, which I in fact thought was just like that I'd pulled my groin, or I just had a bit of a strain or whatever, until it was like my physio went to clear me on my shoulder, took one look at my leg and was like, I'm not going to tell you like to take time off, because I understand that wrestling's like your income and that, but if it tears completely, you're going to be out for 6 months to a year. You're going to need surgery and all that kind of thing. So at that point, I was like, you know what? Something here is telling me drastically to take time away from wrestling. So I guess like in my mind, like that year was particularly a year where I was just trying to get through things because I wanted to be 100% again, and I wasn't. I wasn't back to full health until I returned recently. So I don't know, like once again, it was a great privilege to be on as many shows as I was, especially top shows in the UK. There was some real exciting times during that time, and getting to be in the ring with guys like Trent Beretta and I think Uha Nation was another guy I got to step in there and mix up with. That was great. I love being in there with guys like that. And it's actually funny that you mentioned the Devitt match. Is the day of that show, my back was in such a bad state I couldn't physically stand up. Like things got really bad, man. Like I had a show the night before. I think I got in at like 2 or 3 in the morning. Jumped in a bath, tried to ice and heat my back for an hour before going to bed. Got up like 3 hours later, jumped in the bath, tried to ice and heat it, got to the show and had Chris Garrett, who's I believe he's a physio as well, come down to the show and like just work on my back before I could go out there and like wrestle the 2 matches that I did that day, including the match with Devitt, which I think was about 15 to 20 minutes long.
Yeah, and it was quite an intense match as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, right, and like it was to the point where like my wife and like the promoter and that were like they were trying to come up with a contingency plan, because they were like, look, you can't, like, I couldn't walk from the car to the backstage area without being like crippled over and stuff. So how I got through the match, is just down to adrenaline, coffee, and the crafty hands of Chris Garrett. So.
Yeah. So are you 100% better now then, or have you still got some niggling injuries coming into 2015?
Well, like, I'm pretty much as 100% as 100% a wrestler could be. You always have like these little like niggles and pains, and once you've suffered injuries like that, you never really go back to 100%.
No.
However, I'm physically in a much better place now than I was anywhere through the past year.
Yeah, that's really good to hear then. So do you feel you've got to adapt your style now to suit your injuries and what have you?
Well, what I think it is and once again, this kind of like ties in with when I went, basically once I finally decided to take time away from wrestling, I went into I wanted to get like a qualification to become a personal trainer,
right?
Because that was something else I always was interested in doing, and that I had intentions of trying to pursue as like a side project next to wrestling, and only kind of like going through that and really kind of understanding things a lot better. I think like what it has more to do is not necessarily the style in the ring, but more in regards to warming up efficiently backstage, going through an efficient cool down as well, and really just kind of like conditioning your body to be able to go through what it is that we go through, because, and this is something that I think is really untapped kind of like territory in the wrestling business, is that like when guys train for wrestling, like you'll see them go into the gym and they'll train a body part and they'll go through very much that kind of like bodybuilding, way of training,
yes.
But that really doesn't prepare you for being in a ring and, 1 minute, being up and down and picking somebody up and moving in the ways that we move, or, and what we do is very physically demanding and, is full contact. Do you know what I mean? You're still getting hit. So obviously you kind of have to try and adapt a training method to prepare your body for that, because, doing a dumbbell bench press really doesn't prepare you for being kicked in the face.
No, certainly doesn't, no.
Right,
just rewinding back a bit, you trained under Mark Sloan at the FWA Academy and you made your pro debut in 2006, so you were in training for like 3 years before turning pro, and in this day and age, 3 years seems like a long time.
Oh, basically, the mentality that the Academy had really was that even the guys who debuted, who would be kind of like the least talented guys on the show, arguably would still be at a higher standard than a lot of people who had already made it to shows, elsewhere in the country. There was how can I say, like a grading system as such through that, and there was also there was basically a baseline of talent that you had to achieve before they thought that you were ready to be, seen on a professional show, which is that's how my mentality works. Like these days, like I think it's sometimes unfair for somebody to be having only trained for like a few months to then be thrown onto a show when they're nowhere near ready, because at the end of the day, we're an entertainment business. People, want to come down and be entertained. Like, if somebody's not 100% fully trained yet, then why would you put them in front of a paying audience? If it's not fair on them or the audience at that point in time. Do you know what I mean? So, 3 years did seem like a long time, but then by the time that I debuted, I wanted that so badly. Like I'd been aiming for that for the past 3 years. So, in a way, it kind of made me work harder towards it. Whereas a lot of people get, they achieve things almost so quickly that therefore they don't really appreciate it for what it truly is.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. So you came into UK wrestling scene a long, long time after the World of Sport era. And most wrestlers say that the best way to learn is travelling with the veterans. Were there many veterans to learn from when you started out? Because it was kind of it's going through a transition period, weren't it, UK wrestling to where it is today?
Yeah, I mean, there was still like a lot of the old guys floating around, and I had the privilege of being able to work for a company down on the south coast called Premier Promotions, which was still based in that world of sport style. So there was only, say, like 4 or 5 matches on a show. All the matches would be contested in the the Lord Mount Evans rules.
Right.
I believe that's what it was referred to. Basically, the round system, back in the day. So, there would be guys on the shows like Blondie Barrett or Superstar Mel Sanders, Steve Gray, Danny Boy Collins, to name a few. They were all on those shows, and they would still kind of like work that more technical kind of like pace as such. So being able to be in that environment really kind of like helped me become a more well-rounded performer, because so many I'm pretty sure like the majority of people these days just kind of work to that one fall to a finish kind of Americanized style that now wrestling has become, whereas I had the chance to be able to go in there and have that kind of like that 2 out of 3 falls based over 6 5-minute rounds experience, which a lot of people these days didn't necessarily have the chance to partake in.
Yeah, because it's kind of like died out, that old school sort of like British style, hasn't it now, really?
Yeah. I mean, like the business is constantly changing, and that unfortunately is something that has kind of gone. It was a lot of fun, and it was a completely different dynamic to what we're all used to nowadays. So, getting the chance to be in there with guys of that caliber who, were performing that style, especially in the height that it was in the 70s or 80s, was definitely a great experience for me. And once again, like as a performer, like it gives you a different kind of like landscape to be a part of. It was exciting for me as well, because I'm such a old school wrestling nerd at times too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can imagine, but it was really good. So, not long after you debuted, you wrestled for the ill-fated 1PW promotion in Doncaster.
The ill-fated, wow.
It sort of gained notoriety, didn't it, for, having import-heavy shows and spending a lot of money and drawing big crowds for the time, like 1,000, 2,000 people. And they went out of business, and whenever you bring up 1PW to fans, they get quite hyperbolic about it, saying, they set British wrestling back years and, they ruined it over here for a while. You actually wrestled for the promotion, so what were your thoughts about it? I know you were just coming in there as a rookie sort of thing, but what's your opinion on 1PW?
I don't know, like 1PW for me was a lot of fun, I got the chance to be in a dressing room with guys who I grew up watching, so I really, appreciated that opportunity. And once again, like, I don't know, like I think like everybody can find like a negative in something.
Yeah.
I don't really understand how, that like 1PW would knock British wrestling back a few years, as like one of your claims just was. Like I don't necessarily understand that, but like I said, like it was cool for guys like me who didn't necessarily have the exposure previously that those shows then managed to give you. And I think like maybe the British circuit now, like while it has more consistently more bigger promotions, it doesn't have that one sort of like massive promotion that like everybody kind of identifies as potentially like number one in the UK. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From that kind of standpoint, like 1PW was great. Like I enjoyed it. It was good exposure, and it was cool to be able to be in a dressing room where you had some of the most successful stars in the wrestling business of the past 10 years from all over the world in that one single dressing room.
Yeah, exactly, because I used to go to the shows, and that's all I remember of it. I didn't I'd sort of stopped going by the end, but like that's all I remember it, being able to see like, every top indie wrestler and every, top UK wrestler in one promotion. So, yeah, it is weird that people get so like hyperbolic about it when you talk about it, but, that's wrestling fans for you. So next up, you teamed with former NXT wrestler Joel Redmond as the Thrillers, and you wrestled all over the UK and Europe. Have you got any memories of your team with Joel Redmond?
Yeah, loads. Like, and this is a thing that people, I don't think, necessarily realize at the time is that Joel and me were like brothers, man. Like we lived in this, we both lived in the same flat in Portsmouth because we both moved there to carry on training under the tutelage of Mark Sloan. So we were living out of each other's shadows all the time, which I think really helped add to that kind of chemistry when we were in the ring, because we were genuinely, we worked out together, we trained together in the ring, we traveled together all the time, we drove each other mad plenty of the time as well, but I think all that kind of chemistry really just added to the team, which is why it may have been as successful as it was at that point in time.
Yeah, definitely. So how come you guys ended up breaking up then? Was it just a chance for you to both go off and do your own thing?
I guess so. I mean, we both, I don't think, while we wanted to be successful as a team, we also had our end goals of where we wanted to end up, and our careers just kind of seemed to sort of start drifting away. So it was just that kind of point in time where we both wanted to go and concentrate on singles things a little more so than tag things.
All right, okay. So you teamed up with Bison Smith to face off against the Japanese wrestling legend Mitsuhiro Misawa and Kotaro Suzuki. Sorry if I pronounced those names wrong. The Nova UK event. How was it wrestling Misawa? And did you have much interaction with him before the match and after?
No, not really. Really the first kind of, I saw him outside the venue earlier that day, and then the next time I saw him was stood across the ring from me,
Yeah.
So, a story that kind of came out of it, though, was Bison Smith was in the dressing room with me, and like you mentioned, he was my tag partner, and it was Bison, myself, and Steve Linsky, right? And he just kind of looks at me, and in that I can't really do an impression of him,
Right.
He's, I just don't have that talent, but he's just kind of hey kid, have you ever been hit by a Japanese wrestler before? And obviously at that point in time, me being young and dumb, thinking the Japanese hit really hard and it's kind of scary and stuff. He was I was like, oh no, I haven't. And he was like, you want to know what it's like? And I was like, it was to prepare me for it or whatever. And I was like, oh sure. So I go over to him. He forearms me, sort of in the neck area. It was the hardest forearm I have ever received in my entire career. Seriously, it felt like it knocked my head off, across the dressing room, and I just kind of standing there, was like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Downplay it, and Linsky enjoys reminding me of that story every once in a while. But we got to the ring, and it turns out that both Kotaro and Misawa didn't hit me anywhere near as hard as he did. So he just must have been a real strong dude. But once again, it was cool. The thing as well is that the actual building that was in was the leisure center next to the school that I went to growing up.
Wow.
So we actually used to have PE lessons in that hall.
Yeah.
As part of school and stuff, so it seemed very odd just being in the same location just a few years on, being stood across the ring from one of the biggest legends of the sport. So it was definitely bizarre. It was weird.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially where you saw PE lessons. So staying on the Japanese link, in 2009 you wrestled on the Dragon Gate Tour of Europe before heading over to Japan and appearing on a few tours and pay-per-views for Dragon Gate over there. So how was your time in Japan? You teamed up with Adrian Neville Pack quite a bit as well over there, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, he was over there on the same tours I was on. We ended up being partnered together. We had a bit of a run as a team as part of the what was it, the Summer Adventure Tag League, I believe they refer to it as, in Dragon Gate of 2010. And once again, that was a cool thing because he was a guy who had broken out years previously to me, so I managed to go in there and see, learn from him and see what it was that he did, how he lived his life, and how that would help me become more successful in my career.
Yeah. So how was it when you first went over there? Did you have someone who sort of dealt with foreign talent coming in, showed you around, took you around or anything, or is it just a case of you got off a plane and they were like, yeah, go to Karakan Hall on Sunday or whatever?
No, so basically they put us up in the what was it, basically the building where their head office is. They have a flat above their main office, where they kind of keep some international talent. So I was just rooming with Pac and Juventud Guerrera at that point. So we were in the middle of Kobe, so we just go out and try and do things in the area, and then we get picked up and taken to shows on the show days. So we were looked after, ridiculously well, but we didn't have somebody walking around holding our hands the entire time.
No. So were you accepted by the domestic wrestlers, the Japanese wrestlers? Were they like, did they come in and were they cool with you, or were they just like, oh no, these foreigners are coming in, sort of thing?
I'm sure some of them were a bit like, oh, who's this guy? Do you know? But no, everybody for the most part was like cool as anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think as well, because a lot of them had like previous excursions to America and stuff, like, they knew what it was like to be the imported guy in a foreign country where you didn't speak any of the language. And they took great joy in teaching me all the wrong types of Japanese things that I probably shouldn't say. Which still to this day I can ask for many a thing, none of which is helpful to me in any situation if I ever get lost in Japan or anything like that.
Brilliant. You'll have to do the same to them when they come up to the UK then.
Oh, for sure.
So you debuted for TNA on the UK tour in 2011 and also appeared for them on Impact tapings in Orlando on pay-per-view. And I know you've got on record, countless times saying, what happened with TNA and why it didn't quite work out for you over there. So what were the main things you learned in TNA? Was it, working in front of a TV audience or promos or what was the main things that you learned over there?
So basically, with TNA, the thing that kind of comes to mind straight away is that it's a very different ball game in regards to, being able to get like TV time and stuff like that. Because, I mean, over here, for example, you get paid the same regardless of, obviously you get paid for being a part of the show, but it doesn't necessarily matter in what kind of like, whether you're on first or whether you're on main event, like, you get your appearance fee and that's it. Whereas obviously with TNA, they only have 2 hours of TV time. And if, say this guy's taking up this much time at the start of the show and then this much time later on in the show, that leaves you with less time during the middle. So you really have to be able to do something to stand out, to therefore give an audience that wants to watch TV the chance to see you.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of scrambling over one another to, suggest ideas or suggest things. So like in that regard, it was very kind of like different and eye-opening, because it wasn't just a case of you turn up and wrestle. Like you had so much more to think about, and especially as well when you had people with in the office now with different ideas for you, and they're telling you, why don't you try this, why don't you try doing this, and then you kind of go out and you try to do that, but it isn't necessarily something that you really relate to a point where you feel that like it's a true representation of yourself. You just kind of end up trying to please everybody. Or at least that's what I tried to do. Like I tried to please everybody and do what people were suggesting to me, rather than take like the bull by the horns as such and saying like, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is like my route that I want to go, and telling them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I felt like they kind of like, I tried to take direction from everybody and like put it all together into one package. It didn't work in the way that I wanted it to. So it's one of those things where I look back and I wish I just said, that's not who I am, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to act, you do something with me, kind of more in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was listening to an interview with the Young Bucks and they said pretty much exactly the same thing about their time in TNA. They were trying to do everything that everybody wanted and pleasing nobody. So yeah. So TNA wanted you as a sort of rock star character, didn't they? Initially, and obviously Spud is now Rockstar Spud, and recent Boot Camp 2 winner Mark Andrews also plays in a rock band. So do you think TNA have got something about British wrestlers being rock stars?
I have no idea. I would have loved to have seen Doug dressed up as Gene Simmons, though. I think that would have been great. I don't know, like it was very much something that I think like Dixie had an idea for. Like she seemed to like that kind of like British rock star kind of image. Like that was something that I was asked to portray.
Yeah.
But once again, it's quite hard because like I was saying, you could speak to somebody in the office and they would say, "Oh, why don't you try taking this route?" And then somebody else would suggest something the complete polar opposite to that. So you were kind of lost at who it was that you were really trying to, impress, or who you were trying to, take on whose idea and like really develop that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I guess it's just kind of like one of those things that like once you go through it, you kind of look back and realize how differently you would have done things if given a second chance.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's a learning curve, isn't it?
Oh, totally. Like, real eye-opening experience. Wrestling-wise, like I don't know if it really helped like my in-ring kind of performances as such, but then it completely opened my eyes to that being such a smaller part of the actual parcel, and like looking at all the kind of like other things that go into that 10-minute match as such. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. So even though you're only 26, would you and do other people consider you, one of the vets on the UK scene now?
I hate being referred to as that. Like I generally do. Like no, like I always take it as a compliment, but I hate that feeling that like because people say like, "Oh, you're like one of the vets of the circuit," and I'm like, well, I don't know, because like in my mind I'm still like that young plucky kid who's like trying to own his craft and trying to like step up to the bigger plate of wrestling internationally and stuff like that. So I genuinely don't really see myself as being like the veteran guy. Do you know what I mean? So it is one of those things. Like I guess I'm like one of the main guys on the UK circuit. Like I've been around. Like I've been to companies abroad and being able to wrestle on like a grander scale of things. So like I definitely have experience, but I don't like feel that I'm a veteran. Like in my mind, somebody like Robbie Brookside is a complete veteran. Like Frankie Sloan, veteran. Like guys like that who have been a part of this business for probably like 30, 40 years now, and been like here, there and everywhere and really done it. Like they're the guys who in my mind are the vets.
Right. So but do you find a lot of the younger wrestlers are coming up to you at shows asking for advice and saying, "Oh, Mark, would you mind watching my match and giving me some pointers and things?"
Occasionally, but very rarely. I find it more the case that like I go up to somebody and say like, "Listen, dude, you did this wrong." But no, like people ask for advice every once in a while. But and this is the weird thing as well. Is like when I came through, like I would try and go up to guys and I would sit in dressing rooms closer to guys who were like the vets of the dressing room and just like listen to them and like pick their brains and ask questions and stuff like that. Whereas like a lot of guys that come through now like don't really seem to have that kind of that eagerness to learn. Like they almost kind of expect like somebody to go up to them and tell them rather than actually go up and ask somebody, "Can you watch my match? Can you give me feedback? Hey, what do you think of this?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know whether it's just that they're trying to be polite and they don't want to sort of like step out of line, but also as then like if you don't ask somebody, you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean? Yeah.
And there's been circumstances before where I've asked guys, "Oh, hey, do you mind watching my match?" and like giving me some feedback, where they then purposely gone out and watched my match, and giving me feedback off the back of it, rather than me just hoping that they watch and hoping that they approach me. Like that's not, in my mind, that's not how things should work. Do you know what I mean? Like, like somebody who's a veteran of the sport doesn't owe it to me to come up to me and tell me about my match. Like,
exactly.
It's more about me going up and trying to like respectfully asking them, "Hey, do you mind giving me feedback? I want to learn from you." Like,
yeah, exactly. So has there been nobody that you sort of took under your wing, or like I know you've tagged a lot with Robbie X and people like that. Is there anyone you've sort of like taken under your wing and like shown them a few things?
I mean, there's guys who like I give a few pointers to here and there, but there's nobody who I would say is like my protege or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So no, I guess not.
No. So in Southside, you're known as known for fans chanting "Hot Dog Haskins." I was wondering where that nickname came from.
Oh, how so? Okay. Yeah. So I'm a bad person, basically. So basically, there was a show in Nottingham, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm walking around the ring, just high fiving people or whatever. I get into the ring. I go and stand on the middle rope, and the crowd are kind of like, "Ooh!" I'm like, well, have they not seen anybody else on the show like stand on the middle? Is this suddenly like really high risk or something? Do you know what I mean? I look around and I see this woman kicking off at ringside. I'm just kind of like a bit confused. I'm like, what's going on? So like, I wait a few seconds. I'm looking at her and she's like screaming and shouting, and I'm like, why are you angry? And she's like, look at my son. And I look over and this guy is like holding his ear, and I think that he's bleeding or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did I just like accidentally, while I was high-fiving people, like just slap this guy in the ear and bust him open? Like what the hell have I done? So I get out of the ring and I'm like completely lost and like confused. I was like, I swear I didn't like just smack this guy. So I walk up to him. I'm like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, sorry, like sometimes I get excited. Come and speak to me at the merchandise stand. Like, I'm trying to make it up to you in any way I can. Like, I'm sorry I can't have to like wrestle right now. Do you know, like my opponent's in the ring. So I go back into the ring or whatever, and she gets up and with her son and she leaves. And the crowd start booing her, and I'm like, guys, like, come on, like, you can't be angry at her. Like, yeah. And somebody shouts like, oh, she threw a hot dog at you, Haskins. I was like, yeah, I probably deserve that, you know. And then like the crowds just started chanting like "Hot Dog Haskins," and I was like, okay, like, sure, why not? Eh, like, let's go for it. So like, they started chanting "Hot Dog Haskins" at me. Anyways, so basically the match finishes. I'm at the merchandise stand, and this is where I find out what happens. Is now, as I was going around high fiving people, this person, the woman and her son were sat in the front row. Somebody from the second row reached forward, but their hand was particularly close to his ear. So as I high fived this person in the second row, their hand swung and smacked him in the face, right? Or like smacked him on the ear.
Yeah.
And what had actually happened is I thought he'd put his hands up to high-five me, but he was trying to take a bite out of his hot dog, at which point I turned and slapped the hot dog out of his hands, covering him in ketchup, which is therefore what I thought was blood. And I just like ran off and got into the ring, and she came up to me at the merch stand and she was like, why did you hit the hot dog out of his hand? I'm like, I'm sorry, I genuinely didn't realize, like, I didn't mean to, and really apologized. And she kind of like realized, that it was just a bit of a mistake. But I found out that she did return to the hot dog stand, and she bought another hot dog, this time without condiments. So
just in case she got slapped in the head again.
right. Which also to any like fans that want to go to the Southside events or any event, don't worry, I'm not going to hunt you down and like batter a hot dog out of your hands. It was like a one-time mistake, and but that hot dog stand is actually like, I swear I've basically just become an advert or poster child for them, because anytime I walk past it, they've got Hot Dog Haskins plastered across it, and I'm like, oh wow, we're kind of got a sponsorship deal going on here. Yeah.
So did they give you like 10p for every hot dog sold then?
Oh, I wish they had. I should have tried to barter that with them. That would have been good.
Yeah, exactly. So last few things. You're making that was a brilliant story, by the way. You're making your return to Southside for a weekend of shows at the end of February in Nottingham, Essex and St Neots. And you'll face TNA's DJ Z, and also you'll have a triple threat for the Southside title against your tag team partner Robbie X and your nemesis Tommy End. So what can fans expect from these shows, and you come back to Southside?
I guess what you can expect is me, but with a different mentality. Like, I don't feel like I'm the same guy now that I was previously to before when I took time off. Like, I feel like the months that I was away really helped me reevaluate where I'm at and what it is that I want to, what it is that I kind of stand for. Like, I feel like I've got a new love for wrestling again. And once again, I feel like I'm constantly striving to be a better performer than I was previously. So what you're going to find is that you're going to find a very different, version of me, who's going out there with guys, like Z Marion or DJ Z, who once again, I want to go out there and have like the best possible match I can do, and especially with guys like Tommy End, who, all issues aside, is a hell of a talented performer. So getting the chance to be in there with guys like that, especially coming back from like an injury, I just want to be the very possible best that I can be, and I'll be able to step in there with talented guys and make that happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, final question. I asked Southside promoter Ben Old if there's anything we should ask you or anything that'd make you laugh, and he said we should ask you about a romantic night you spent in a German hostel.
Okay.
What was that all about?
Oh, gee, let me try and remember. So, I had a couple of shows for WXW in Germany. I guess a couple of years ago now. Basically, we just ended up like rooming together. I think he came out there for the weekend as well. I don't really remember what happened, so maybe that kind of like adds to the story. Like I don't remember if we got like ridiculously drunk or something, but yeah, we ended up sharing a room in a hostel, which was freezing cold from what I do remember. Like I said, I don't really remember it that much, but
it must have been a fun night then if you can't remember it.
Yeah, right? That's what I figured.
So for anybody who wants to follow Mark on Twitter, you can follow him at Mark_Haskins. Check out his shop, shophaskins.com, facebook.com/MarkHaskinsPro. And if you want to get tickets for the Southside shows that we mentioned, they're on sale at southside.co.uk or our affiliate ringsideworld.co.uk. Is there anything, any plugs that I missed there, or anything else that you want to say before we wrap it up?
I'm on Instagram now as well. That's the other one, which I think is Mark Haskins Pro. So if you feel like looking at pictures of me, then go to Instagram and follow me on there, because that's where they'll be at. So just I guess kind of like I hope everybody's looking forward to this year, and onwards and upwards with things to come.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate your time today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All the news and views from the world of American, British and Japanese wrestling. PWN.
Huge thanks again for Mark coming in and doing the interview. We really, really enjoyed it and having him on as a guest. If you like what you hear, then be sure to hit the subscribe button on iTunes or Podomatic or on Stitcher. You can follow us on Twitter at PWN Radio. And we've got a variety of shows on PWN Radio. There's not just us discussing the UK scene. There's also Jay Shoot with Bonsky and Zach, who are here every week telling you all the latest news and reviews on Japanese wrestling. We've also got a brand new show, No Sell It, with Kristen, Liv and Florence, who are covering Lucha Underground mainly, and also covering US Indies. So be sure to check out those shows. And just want to say thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.
Let's all go on the urban safari, we might see some illegal migrants. Oi, look, there's a chap, that means council housed and violent. He's got a hoodie on, give him a hug. A second thoughts don't, you don't wanna get mugged. Oh shit, too late, that was kinda dumb. Whose idea was that? Stupid, he's got some fun, ain't we all? Be the joker, play the fool, it's politics, ain't it all? Smoke and mirrors, April fools, all year round, all in all. Just another brick in the wall. Get away with murder in the schools, use 4 letter swear words cause we cool. We're all drinkers, drug takers, every single one of us runs the herb. Keep on believing what you read in the papers, count to a stake is gone with the herb. Thinking our life on the counter of date is from everything you ever read about it or heard. But it's all true, so stay for your safest. There's no need to step foot out the bird. Truth is here, we're all disturbed. We cheat and lie, it's so absurd. Feed the fear, that's what we've learned. Fuel the fire, let it burn. Oi, I said boy, what you looking at, you little rich boy? We're poor, round here, find home and lock the door. Don't come round here no more, you can get run for. Real, yeah, because my mind is ill. My mind is ill. For real, yeah, you know my mind is ill. My mind is ill. You could get lost in this concrete. concrete jungle, new builds keep springing up out of nowhere. Take the wrong turn down a one-way junction, find yourself in the hood, nobody goes there. We got an eco-friendly government, they preserve our natural habitat. Built an entire Olympic village around where we live about, pulling down any flats. Give us free money and we don't pay any tax. NHS healthcare, yes please, many thanks. People get stabbed round here, there's many shanks. Nice knowing someone's got a back when we get attacked. Don't bloody give me that, I lose my temper. Who closed down the community centre? I kill time there, used to be a member. What will I do now till September?